Wednesday, October 11th, 2017. That little snicker in the background, some doofus
What are you,
in New
Jimmy
York.
2 times?
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm going to get the papers. Get the papers.
Get the papers. I am Goes. That voice is Gorgeous George. He's at an undisclosed location in Las Vegas. Dan Tom, to my left, he is an MMA analyst. And Danny, the producer. Well, he's a producer. That's what he does. You got blue hair.
Coming up in a minute.
How's everybody doing? In 1 minute.
We're all right. Fun show today. Lyoto Machida will be on. Michael Johnson, future featherweight, it appears. He'll be on. Johny Hendricks, a middleweight. He'll be on. Machida and Hendricks both have fight assignments. Machida headlines UFC Fight Night 119 in a few weeks against Derek Brunson in his native soil of Brazil. Sao Paulo, Brazil to be more exact. Johny Hendricks flies to New York to take on Paulo Borrachinha. That's the UFC 217 card with GSP, Michael Bisping, Joanna defends, Cody defends, and then, of course, Johnson will match him up against some of them names out there at 145 pounds. See what's next for him. Kind of a rejuvenation for him. He doesn't really need it. We know who he is. His fights are great. Now we just got to match him up. All right, folks, stay close. We'll be right back.
This is your captain speaking. We are making our descent into Las Vegas McCarran Airport. On behalf of our crew, we'd like to thank you for flying MMAjunkie Airlines. Now please fasten your seatbelts and put your tray tables in your upright position because the descent is going to be a little bit bumpy.
Alright, Junkie Nation, it's time to roll, baby, on MMAjunkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Goes. This is what we doing while we do it, baby. All night long, we rollin'! Yeah!
The MMAjunkie Radio revolution is upon us.
Can you dig it?
There's no escape. No escape. Through the vast frontier of cyberspace and through a sea of stars in outer space.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We've solidified our combat communications stranglehold.
We are controlling transmission.
With the use of MMAjunkie Radio and SiriusXM satellite radio technology. MMAjunkie Radio. Commence transmission. Live from MMAjunkie Radio HQ in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Here are your hosts, Gorgeous George and Goes.
From the fight capital of the world, inside the beautiful Mandalay Bay Race and Sportsbook, and an undisclosed location in the Mountains Edge community of Las Vegas, it's the MMAjunkie Radio Show, the only show that matters. I'm your host, Gorgeous George. With me, as always, is that devious and dastardly Goes, Ari's co-host, new addition to the team, the best fight analyst in the game, Dan Tom, and, of course, Danny Otto. He'll be handling all of the production. He's back on the East Coast. What's up, fellas?
What up? Everybody in a good mood today?
Yes.
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 Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Fun show ahead, too, man, with Lyoto Machida, Johny Hendricks, Michael Johnson, and like Dan Tom was touching on the pre-show, some news to talk about. You know, that's the stuff I think we can get to on the early part of the show because those interviews will be in the second half of the show. But now's the time to call in and talk about the latest news, the fight cards that took place, the ones that are coming up. We'll start things off, of course, with some of that stuff that's happening on the card in Australia. There's been a little bit of a shake-up there with Mark Hunt and Fabricio Verdum. We'll touch on that in just a second. However, a couple things. Let's clear up a couple things. Massively disappointed that the United States will not participate in the next World Cup 2018 in Russia. That hurts because I thought we were good. I mean, come on, Trinidad and Tobago, we were supposed to play them. All we had to do was draw, for crying out loud. And two miracles had to take place on the other side. I won't bore you guys with that, but basically Mexico getting upset by Honduras, Panama getting a win. I mean, a bunch of things had to line up, and I just didn't think it was possible. Goes and I was just focused on Peru getting that part of our background in. And, of course, we are in a qualifying playoff versus New Zealand, so we're ecstatic. Then 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, the United States is getting bumped out, man. That massively tremendously sucked. I don't know that we'll get over that for a few weeks goes. I mean, we're so used to the United States. I think the last time the United States hasn't been in the World Cup is 1986.
Yeah, we're spoiled. And, I mean, I said this when it happened. When they let Jurgen Klinsmann go, I thought that was, I don't want to say the nail in the coffin, but because CONCACAF isn't as great as some of the other regions where you have to qualify. But you just don't shake up a team like that. And you could tell those guys were just being spoiled brats, man. I mean, Klinsmann's proven that he can take teams far. He's a good coach. They just weren't listening. They were being dicks. And that's why it wasn't working. They made that switch. And it's kind of like switching your training camp, like with 3 weeks to go in a fight or something like that. It's just not a good move. They did it, came back, bit us in the ass, and now look where we're at.
Wait, there's a guy named Jurgen Klinsmann?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a joke somewhere in there, right, guys?
Nah, he really is Jurgen
No,
Klinsmann.
he's an all-time great, man. A German player. He was a forward. He played for Tottenham. He played in Spain. He married an American lady, so he moved over to the United States years ago. So he was actually a perfect fit, man. You know, he's been there. He's won World Cups. Mm-hmm. He's taken a young Germany team, which is what he was doing with the United States. He basically turned over the roster. We got younger. A lot of people didn't like it, but it's the same thing he did in Germany for a few years, and I think they got to a third place once in a World Cup. So I don't know. The equation was there, but again, we'll stop. It's disappointment. We had to share it just because the emotions yesterday of it was basically the last World Cup qualifier for the whole world. I think now we're all set with the exception of these playoffs that are happening in a few weeks. But you should have seen all the possibilities. I hope I wasn't killing Goes and Juliet and my mom. As scores were going off, I was trying to tell them, all right, we just got scored on, so now what we need is, and I was trying to lay out the possibilities out there. We needed Brazil to score at least 2 goals. We needed Paraguay to not score a goal. We had an opportunity where if Ecuador tied the game, then it would forgive us if we tied. I mean, it was everywhere, man, for 2 hours. It was fun. We had some great Peruvian food. It was awesome. And plus we were WhatsApping and texting with other relatives. I wish people would have really understood just what a massive day that was everywhere but in the United States, just because there's not really that much love for soccer in the United States. And then to top it off, we're not in. But Goes, how is everyone not in South America glued to a TV yesterday at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time?
Oh, it's a ghost town. I mean, the only thing I can think of, because even here in the United States, like when Super Bowl's going on, there's still cars out. There's still people at the movies, stuff like that. What I could maybe say is, like, picture Texas for Friday Night Lights. Maybe it's something like that, where it's just kind of a ghost town. Everybody's at that game.
Pretty much, man. All right, so 866-522-2846. That's the number to call in. I encourage people to do it in the first hour because in the second hour, again, we have Lyoto Machida, Johny Hendricks, Michael Johnson. I'm sure there'll be a couple pockets for you to slip in and out, but this is more of a time where we can, have a run of calls and really, really get into some of these stories. So I guess the big one here is Mark Hunt has been pulled from UFC Fight Night 121. He's already been replaced by Fabricio Verdum. Now, how I came on this was through Twitter, and somebody had posted Mark Hunt's, thoughts on it all, and basically expletive-filled post towards UFC President Dana White. I was reading that, I was like, what the hell? And of course you got to like sift through it and see, is this from 5 years ago when he was pissed at him, or 2 years ago, or is this the real Mark Hunt? And as I'm doing that, I start coming across the stories and seeing what's happening. Apparently he had penned an article in which he talked about slurring and a few other problems that his career has brought him. And so the UFC saw that, showed concern for their athlete, and decided maybe we should pull him and get him to have some testing done, and check his health out. And of course, while all that's happening, they already brought in Fabricio Verdum, and Mark Hunt has now given another side to it, saying, hey, look, I may slur when I'm drunk, but I'm all right. I've had tests. I've passed tests. So, of course, there's the back and forth. I don't know that any dialogue between them has been made public, but initially, guys, what were your thoughts when you saw this?
I thought he had lost his mind. I mean, it's not the first time we've ever seen Mark Hunt do something like that. But wow, that reaction, like, even for Mark Hunt was, I think, a little bit over the top. But then again, like, oh, man, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, I just feel like a phone call. Pick them up, call someone, you're going to get some sort of answer. It just seemed like that was way, way, way over the top.
Yeah, I think, I'm sure Mark Hunt, he has an angry side to him. I don't think that should be surprising per se, but I don't think these kind of reactions that we're talking about help his case as far as looking out for his long-term health. The erratic, the anger, seeing these kind of symptoms kind of make it hard to make his case if he was quote unquote misquoted, right, guys? I mean, it's a little tough, and I like Mark Hunt. I'm just saying it's tough.
He has threatened the UFC with another lawsuit. He does have one pending, of course. So who knows if that comes into play. I imagine it does. But what I was telling the guys on the pre-show, I didn't really have much time to say what I wanted to say, was the athletes that go public and go head-to-head with Dana White, their record isn't very good, I don't believe. I mean, sometimes concessions are made and usually things can work out, but I think the point was Mark Hunt wanted a headline in Australia coming up here in about 6 weeks away or something like that. And now that's not going to happen. These tests that the UFC, the further tests that the UFC wanted to have done, couldn't a conversation have just taken place? The UFC is pretty good about saying, all right, we got you, an appointment, and we filled in a rush order for you can go in there and get this battery of tests that we would like done, which is what they stated. Go in there, take care of it, and with 6 weeks away, he could still be on the card. I guess if it was handled a little bit more professionally. Instead, you get this back and forth, and now we have a replacement in Fabricio Verdum. But again, with this much time left, I really feel like this could have been rescued. Mark Hunt said what he said. The UFC reacted to that, but wow. I don't know what happens here at this point. I imagine he will go in there and get the testing done once all this is solved, just because whether it be for this fight or another fight, he's going to want to fight again. The UFC pays him better than anyone else will. And I think Mark has already talked in the past how he basically doesn't have much a hand to play. When he fought recently, I remember they were asking him, and he basically said, he's not getting any younger. And he's got to provide it for his family. So what changes here, guys? Nothing, right? He's not getting any younger. And the lawsuits, the scathing posts on social media, it's an attention grabber, but it doesn't seem to be a solution to me, in my eyes.
Yeah, it's not even close to a solution. You know what's crazy in all this is Mark Hunt is a guy that years ago the UFC didn't even want. They were willing to pay him to just kind of sit out. And we all knew him from Pride, and we knew the kind of heart that this guy had and the fights that he would deliver. But, boy, talk about a chip on your shoulder. He came into the UFC, and right away, I mean, think of some of the fights that he's given us. Just the Antonio Silva fight alone. Remember watching that, George, in Big Bear? How crazy of a fight that was? I mean, dude's all heart. I just wish every once in a while he would take a big breath before he acted.
Most definitely. So we'll have to see how that one plays out. There still is time, I think, for this to be fixed, mended, but you got to believe that this guy will be in a doghouse until his days with the UFC are done. And that's unfortunate because he is arguably still their biggest star. I know Whitaker is an interim champion for him, young, and he'll be the future. But in that part of the world, New Zealand, Australia, it's got to be Mark Hunt still, and he'll hold on to that for just a wee bit longer because I believe Whitaker's already blowing up and will continue to blow up. But that's key for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So I have to believe that they've wanted this to work out. It just hasn't.
No, definitely.
Yeah, I agree too.
All right, let's talk about. You guys kind of left me hanging there. I have to scramble. Hey, how about that? What happened in Japan in Pancrase? I think we kind of voiced our opinion.
The weight cut?
How bad it was. And yeah, man. Going back to, tying it into stuff that happened with Kevin Lee. I watched it again, man. It really, really broke my heart to see that. And Mark Goddard, of course, also made a video about that, and Ben Folks wrote an article. And you know, the athlete is obviously going to want to. They're going to want to get paid. They're going to want to compete, and the guy did. He went to a decision the next day. But who starts to interject at what point? Mark Goddard made the point that as you're depleted, you know, you're not yourself. You're not thinking right. At some point in time, somebody then speaks on your behalf. Your team, you know, they can speak on your behalf. They have to have a little bit of responsibility, because think about how tragic that situation could be, you know. And then from the promoter side, do you really want that out there? I mean, especially Pancrase, they have usually like 20 fights. Like, why would they just not say, okay, this fight's just not going to happen. We'll move it to the next one. We'll move it to the one after. But let's get this guy right. I mean, you know, we're talking about these problems in the UFC, and think about how regulated they are and all the resources they have for their athletes. But what about the parts of the world where they, you know, it's still the Wild West, more like the Wild West than at times it can be here in North America? What's going on with that?
I'd love to ask that question to Ensign Inoue, because he's very familiar with that culture. And for the longest time, when we go back to Pride Fighting Championships, we'd often hear from fighters like, you know, how come guys never miss weight in Pride? And they would kind of give us that look like, yeah, we get on the scale, but that scale may not be 100% accurate. And but you see here, I mean, this was a fighter that really, obviously, if they would have given him a little bit of a leeway, he would have taken it. He looked terrible, dude. And I don't even think that's the type of decision you need to make in the back. Like, I would almost want somebody to step on the stage and just wave it off right then and there. I mean, think about how many people were involved. The fighter, his corner, officials, people from the organization. For all those people to just kind of turn an eye to something like that, it's disheartening. But at the same time, you have to remember it's a different culture, it's a different country. They just don't think the way we do.
And that's the thing. You're right. It's the accountability. Everybody was there. I mean, the argument where we're talking about fighter safety, usually the argument is, should the ref have stopped it or should the corner have stopped it? That's a little more delicate one where you can kind of bounce a responsibility back and forth, unfortunately. But this was clear as day, like you guys stated. It was clear as day. The athletic commission, you know, would have a clear accountability in a perfect world. But obviously the process was so obvious that the corner should have stepped in at some point. And I know that affects their wallet too, but that spoke very loudly to me, that scene.
Yeah, that was something else, man. Guys, Daniel Cormier and Tony Ferguson have been having a little bit of a Twitter war. Have you seen that?
I saw bits and pieces of it. It really didn't make much sense to me.
Well, from where I can gather, Tony Ferguson, I think where all this is centered is DC's commentary about what should be next. And so they just basically go back and forth. Tony Ferguson says, I don't like fake. I enjoyed your commentary at UFC 216. Cormier had said, if you would have listened, I told you what I thought would happen, at the same time saying that it's not what should happen, but would. Listen. So Goes and I, we did the broadcast with Dan Tom. We did the sportscaster broadcast. So we didn't record the fights at home. But I'm anxious to see what he's talking about or what they're grabbing at here. If anybody can share with us, please call in 866-522-2846. But I'm thinking maybe DC was maybe more in favor of Conor versus Nate versus title unification. I don't know, because that's the one thing I guess that we didn't get was much of the audio from the guys, because we were providing that with our own alternative broadcast. But they go back and forth. At some point, DC just tells them, I'll see you at Fox, you're an idiot. So I don't know, I guess they'll talk it out then. But Ferguson, who's very active on Twitter, he's been having fun. You know, some people are singing his praises and he's fist bumping them, and others who are butting heads, he's telling them to go to hell. It's kind of been fun because it made me go into Ferguson's timeline for like the last 50, 75 tweets, and he's all over the place, showing respect to Kevin Lee, boxing with Daniel Cormier, boxing with some fans, fist bumping other fans. It's been pretty funny, but If anybody can shed a little bit of light on that, I'd love to see it. Tony Ferguson did ask him about the towel incident in Buffalo, and Cormier elected not to really answer it. I believe Daniel Cormier will let that go as long as there's still, and I don't know, is there still some sort of an appeal or a lawsuit or something like that from Anthony Johnson's side? Did that already get dismissed? Is that done? Because anytime Cormier does a show like ours or anything else, they can grab that audio and use it against it.
I think one day, I think when it comes out is one day when that guy writes a book. I think it'll finally be in there or something.
Yeah.
But he seems to hold that one very tight to the chest. No pun
He
intended.
does. I was joking with him the other day when he was in studio, and we were talking about Kevin Lee because he was there in studio as Kevin Lee. We were waiting for him to weigh in, and then figuring out what he was going to do afterwards. And I don't know if you guys heard, but I started to let him know, well, what'd you do? Because you seem to lose it pretty quick.
Yeah.
But he said
That's great.
I think he said he went to the restroom or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I sure as hell don't want to get subpoenaed because, again, if that ever goes, if anything like that ever became legal, I think they can always pull that type of audio. So
you're lucky he
one
was
day
playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I think you would have been his next match.
Oh, my goodness.
If he didn't have a control in his hand.
Yeah, DC's the best. Ross Pearson, you know he's lost 4 straight. He says he's still with the UFC.
Yeah, I saw that. It's on the front page of MMAjunkie.com.
I suppose that works. You know, his fights never really suck, but I've always taken it a little personal when guys can go that far. And again, my boy Ulysses Gomez just gets that 2-fight run. He gets cut. The first fight, he filled in on 10 days' notice. That's not too fair. So the next time he gets a full camp, and it was a controversial decision out in the UK, and then that was it. I don't know. I've always not liked that. You know, the UFC has worked a lot off precedents in the past, so I've always hoped that they would kind of be close, but that one didn't work out to a guy that's close to the show.
I remember Dan Hardy got 4.
He got 4. Jessica I's still with him.
Gomi's currently
the 25 card. Gomi, yeah.
Gomi's at 5 right now.
There's a few of them.
Wow.
Gomi's at 5 right now. So
did Matt Brown also lose 4?
Matt Brown. Let me look it up. Actually, that
yeah,
actually does sound familiar though.
For some reason, that rings a bell. Bellator champion Rafael Carvalho. He'll be meeting Alessio Sacra in Italy soon at an upcoming Bellator. Brian Caraway. I told you I saw him back in the gym. He does have a fight. It's Luke Sanders at UFC Fight Night 123 in December. That sounds like Fresno to me, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
Which is 1 week after Detroit and a few weeks before UFC 219 in Las Vegas. The latest USA Today Sports and MMAjunkie rankings have come out as well, and a little bit of movement there. Primarily, most notably, Demetrius Johnson overtaking John Jones as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. I'll be poking into the Facebook chat, into the YouTube chat to see if you all agree with that. I think people have voiced their opinions the last few days, many not feeling Mighty Mouse's strength of schedule. But I disagree. I think Mighty Mouse has finished 7 of his last 10, and he's got a long win streak going. He's been one of the more active champions. He's, I think he's basically doing a little bit more than the other fighters that are in the talks, because let's throw Jones's troubles aside. What he did versus DC was amazing. DC even said it. But there was a struggle against OSP, and plus, look at his numbers. He's only fought 1 time for the last 5 years, and I think before the DC KO, he had 4 straight decisions. So that's what Demetrius Johnson was getting accused of. Decisions, no finishes. Well, now he's getting a ton of those finishes, and the other guy's been getting some of those decisions. Well, when we're splitting hairs at the top, talking GOAT status or pound-for-pound current status, that's a difference maker in my book. What do you guys think?
We have to split hairs when you're really breaking things down like that, and you break down little things like what Demetrius Johnson, his submission this past Saturday. Like, who else can you name that's done that, right? I mean, nobody else has done. He's doing shit that people aren't doing. It's amazing. For me, it's slam dunk. It's easy. It's Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah, it's funny. It's there's two different ones. There's pound for pound, which I kind of elaborated and with the car metaphor, the origin of that term. But then there's also greatest of all time, which R.J. Clifford made a great argument on yesterday's show where he was advocating John Jones over DJ. You can have much more latitude, a little more broader definition when we're talking about all time versus pound for pound, in my opinion. Because all time there's just so many different. It's like we talk about the Mount Rushmore all the time. We always have those. Well, Hoist Gracie's got to be up there. There's always those choices versus what's new, what's today, which is Demetrius Johnson. That said, I'm with Goes. It's DJ for me in both categories. But for right now,
guys, I do have Matt Brown's record up, and he lost to Robbie Lawler, Johnny Hendricks, but then he got a win against Tim Means, and then lost to Damian Maia, Jake Ellenberger, and Donald Cerrone.
So he just had a 3-fight losing streak and a 2-fight losing streak. So he just kind of had a bad run, but he never got to 4 in a row.
Right. But before that, he had a 7-fight win streak, so maybe.
Yeah, no, he was a beast. Yeah, he just got it. He got up there with some of the big names, and he lost some fights there. But of course, Matt Brown in Norfolk will be fighting his last fight against Diego Sanchez. We hope to catch up with him. All right, just a couple more things. We'll take a break, and then we'll come back and smash them phone calls. 866-522-2846. UFC 218 has also added Amanda Cooper versus Angela Magana, Jeremy Kimball versus Dominic Reyes. 7-time UFC vet Cody McKenzie, who I saw the other day at Extreme Couture, is in a 4-man single-night tournament. He told me, man, that's right down my alley. So he's stoked. He's going to make a vacation out of it, travel in Italy. Kurt Hollabaugh, the magnificent Morocco, did a great job describing what happened with Kurt Hollabaugh, who was a winner at Dana White Contender Series 1. He was suspended 9 months. The win was overturned. However, he did a catch-up with his manager, Brian Butler, and now that camp is pushing for suspension reduction, and they're also stating that his UFC status will not be in jeopardy. I think a lot of the confusion comes from whether those shows were under the USADA realm or not. Are they working as UFC athletes or not? And there was an alleged IV usage. So those stories are there. We'll see if we can dive into those. Henry Cejudo will fight at UFC 218 despite injuries caused in that fire in Northern California. He was a guest at an event that was taking place at a golf course, I guess a golf tournament or something like that. He did lose his Olympic gold medal, unfortunately, but he did not break his ankle, and he should be good to go for UFC 218 against Sergio Pettis. Now, speaking of UFC 218, Detroit people, or those of you that love to travel to big events, this is a massive event. Holloway, Edgar, Ngannou, Overeem, Gaethje, Alvarez, Pettis, Cejudo, and guess what? 50 gets you in the door. Tickets on sale today. Today's probably your Fight Club people. Tomorrow's the UFC newsletter people, and then of course Friday is the general public. So get in there. But man, for $50 to get in the door, even if you're up in the rafters, hell, that still sounds like a great time out there. You can always look at the big screen if you're losing sight of what's happening, but it's great, man. It's great to be in the arena if you've never been.
Yeah,
and
go to an
that
NFL game.
Part of the United States doesn't get a show.
That's what you're going to pay in parking. If you go to the new 49ers stadium, isn't it like $60-$70 to park?
I believe so. Yeah. All right, folks. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will talk about. We will take some calls. 866-522-2846. We can have a nice run of calls because we are wide open for the next 30, 35 minutes. Then, of course, in the second hour, we'll talk to Lyoto Machida, Johnny Hendricks, and Michael Johnson, UFC athletes back to back to back. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on SiriusXM Rush 93. Stay close.
To link into the MMA Junkie Radio Network, hit us up on Twitter.com at MMA Junkie Radio. This is MMA Junkie Radio. Here are your hosts, Gorgeous George and Goes.
For the first time since 1986, the United States men's national team failed to qualify for the World Cup. SiriusXM FC Channel 85 is reacting to this shocking turn of events and exploring the impact it will have on soccer in the United States. SiriusXM FC Channel 85, soccer all day, every day. Man, it really will have an impact. I think they probably need to start moving some people around. For sure, the coach, Arena. He took responsibility, but he also said no changes need to be made. I didn't like that. Sunil Gulati, who's been kind of like the director, the CEO, the president, whatever the top assignment is there for U.S. soccer, whether it's his direct fault or not, it's not like he coaches or plays. He's responsible. And Major League Soccer, yeah, it's gotten better, I guess, over the years since 1994 when it was founded. But has it gotten that much better? Has it made the United States soccer team better? I mean, let's not forget, we also didn't qualify for the last two Olympics. So sometimes that head just needs to roll just because that's how changes are made. New visions, new directions. Who knows, man? But I'm a little tired of seeing that name. I will give him credit. The soccer, U.S. men's soccer side, Major League, they have made a ton of money, but it's still, I think the end product was to make the national team better. That has not happened. Yeah. All right, folks. Goes?
No, I was just going to say something to Sunil Gulati.
Look at the sign. Beat it, nerd.
It's time.
All right, let's take some calls. 866-522-2846. Let's start off with Marco in Waco, Texas.
Marco from Waco Road. Que pasa, vatos? Congratulations to Peru. Sucks for the United States. And what happened to Chile, dude? I mean, they get the team, two-time Copa America champions, started out with the Champions League or whatever, the Champions Cup, and they didn't even show up for these qualifiers, man. I am so disappointed. Chile's out, man. That sucks.
They are. They could have lost 1-0, and I believe they would have been okay. Instead, when it got to 2-0 and then 3-0, that was their eventual downfall. That was the way Peru was able to backdoor in. But I knew that I saw Arturo Vidal missing, and of course, Chile is based around some superstars they have, like Alexis Sanchez, Arturo Vidal. I forget their striker, their other striker, Omar, I believe his name is. I forget what his last name is, Bravo or something like that.
Omar.
When a few of those guys are clicking, Chile's tough. You noted some of the big tournaments that they've won, but it all has to come together and they have to be healthy.
Yeah, that kind of sucks, man. But what are you gonna do? And I still kind of bump out about it. When it comes to that pound for pound discussion and best of all time, dude, I am all in the Demetrius Johnson trend right now because the argument being right now he's in a 13-5 winning streak, second only to Anderson Silva. He broke the record for more title defenses, and unlike Anderson Silva and John Jones, he has never tested positive for anything. So that alone put an asterisk on the other two candidates for the greatest of all time, and yet give me all that kind of a schedule stuff, but he has beaten the people that they put in front of him, and I beat them handily. He got finishes. And he's pulling out moves that nobody ever seen before with the mighty whiz bar. So, let's give Demetrius, at this point in time, today, the greatest of all time status. And then we'll revisit the discussion later on when something happens. Let's say, if George St. Pierre wins the middleweight title, we can revisit the discussion later. But as the conversation evolves right now, as of today, Demetrius Johnson, pound for pound best, greatest of all time. Peace out, guys.
All right, we'll see you, Marco. There you go. A strong vote from a hardcore fan like Marco from Waco, Texas. He says Demetrius Johnson's the greatest at this time, and he brought in his strong points. Let's move on here to Cecilio from California. What's up, Cecilio?
Oh, hey, what's up, guys? What's going on?
Not much, and you?
Just chilling. Day off from work, chilling.
Cool. What's up?
Yeah. So I just want to say that I have no problem with Demetrius Johnson being number one pound for pound right now. Of course, he just recently broke the record for most title defenses, and he's pulling off moves that no one else does at all. But you keep in mind that Dana White, he did say that he considers Conor the best for pound right now. I mean, how do you guys?
Well, no, I thought when Jones won, he gave it to Jones, and I thought when DJ won, he gave it to DJ. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's what these guys are doing when they're fighting. They're proving something new. You know, DJ broke that record. Jones vanquished his greatest foe. You know, at the time when Conor did win that second title, there was a strong argument for Conor because, you know, this a world champion in two different weight classes, and he pancaked both champions. That was very, very impressive, regardless of what had happened in between to Nate Diaz. But, you know, I think at this very moment, the best fighter on the planet, pound for pound, is Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Conor,
Right,
or
yeah.
with any pound for pound, the number one question I think that needs to be asked is that fighter fighting the best people of his era in his division? And while Conor has achieved a lot of great things, if you're going to knock him for some things, it's that there's still a lot of guys that he needs to give a shot to go through, where you look at some of the other guys and they've left their divisions bare almost.
I'll just add one thing that as far as like looking at the grand scale, all-time pound for pound, it's true you have to take in for account, you know, positive tests. But I don't know about you guys, but the first fighter I ever heard being equated for pound in MMA is maybe one of the best examples still to this day. Not what happened to him after, but I'm talking about BJ Penn. He was doing all the things you wanted to see Conor or GSP do, and there was none of the politics or anything attached to it. There was no worry about weight. There was no worry about money or contract. He was just going out and doing it. And then from the technical side, he was one of the first guys that could wrestle, strike, and do jiu-jitsu.
He fought one of our guests today, Lyoto Machida.
Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. 220 pounds or something.
Cecilia, what else you got?
No, that was just about it. Just want to get my 2 cents in. I just want to say I love this show. Yeah, all right.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Cecilia.
All right, thanks, guys.
See ya.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care. All right,
All
bye-bye.
right,
Cecilia.
well, you know,
Cecilia.
it's funny because I know a lot of people are saying, you know, like one argument I saw, and it was in our chat on Monday show, Tuesday, and I'm trying to pay a little bit more attention, so I'm in there. YouTube.com/MMA Junkie video, Facebook.com/official MMA Junkie. Let's look at Anderson Silva's run. You know, when he was 17-4, he came out of Cage Rage, beating Tony Fricklin. Comes over, wipes up Chris Levin pretty good, then immediately wins the title from Rich Franklin. So far, so good. But remember, then he had Travis Lutter. That wasn't the number one contender at the time. Remember, they based the reality show around Sarah and Lutter, and they won. And so at that point, it was, I don't want to say a gimme or anything like that. Lutter didn't make weight. It didn't even count as a title defense, but it wasn't a number one contender.
And he didn't blow through him either.
Correct. He got mounted, too.
Yeah.
So then he fights Nate Marquardt, Rich Franklin, and Dan Henderson. All legitimate, all number one contenders, and they all got finished. So now the Anderson Silva train is really, really starting to go downhill. You know, downhill in the sense like there's no stopping him. Mm-hmm. He gets to James Irvin. Hey, he fought out of his weight class. You got to give him props, you know, trying something new. But then he had back-to-backs with Cote and Leites. Now, going back to that time, those guys, I don't think they were number one clear-cut contenders, but what happened was Anderson Silva was starting to basically beat the better guys, or the better guys were kind of eliminating each other. He gets to Forrest Griffin and fights a guy who at that time wasn't the champ, but had been the champion. Oh, no, he hadn't been the champion yet, right?
I don't think so.
No. He fights out of his division, but he wound up fighting a guy who became a world champion, so you have to give him credit. Got the finish in the first round. That was amazing. Damian Maia, he defended there. I believe Damian pretty much earned his spot as well. And then we get to Chael Sonnen, who did the same thing. But in that fight, which again it's a tangled web here because in the end, Chael would test positive. But in that fight, you know, it wasn't going his way until he pulled out the submission. But still, that's what a champion's made of. You got to give him that credit. You also got to give him the deductions for getting owned for 4.5 minutes. But in the end, I guess it wouldn't have mattered anyway. We get to Vitor Belfort. All right, if you're going to say Demetrius Johnson, oh my God, he's pulling things out of his ass, the mighty armbar. Well, how about that kick straight up the pipe, the front kick that knocked out Vitor Belfort? That hadn't really been seen, and with stakes like that at UFC 126, for a world title, that was amazing. Yushin Okami had earned his spot. He thumped him in Rio de Janeiro. Chael Sonnen had earned his second time, and in that time it was fair and square. Of course, he beat Chael Sonnen there with a finish at UFC 148. Then he saves the show and moves up and fights Stephan Bonner. Put on a dazzling display there, which, by the way, that fight, guys, is almost 5 years old.
Wow.
It will be 5 years old this Friday. Amazing how time goes by. Chris Weidman, of course, he comes back. Now, let's put ourselves in that position. UFC 162. I don't want to take anything away from Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman hadn't fought in a year, and I believe he had a little bit of an adrenaline dump. Things weren't going good, but Anderson started clowning, and all it takes is getting hit on the button, and that's what happened. But Anderson Silva, that was a big mistake on his part, because I think he could have got past Weidman on that night, because in that second round, Weidman, you could just tell, was really, really getting tired, and if Anderson Silva would have kept up those leg kicks and just basically, thrown a little bit more, the finish would have been there. And then, of course, we don't even know if we get to the injury at UFC 168, because I don't know that we would have needed to do an immediate rematch. But regardless, Weidman stayed there, threw his hands, caught him with a hook. Down goes Anderson. Anderson came back at UFC 168, was in great shape, was motivated, ready to go. Chris Weidman checks the leg kick. Kudos to Chris Weidman. That, of course, began the Chris Weidman era. He comes back. Nick Diaz, Michael Bisping, Cormier. Arguably you could say he beat Bisping, but the record doesn't show it. The Diaz fight he won, but that got thrown out the window. Both guys having problems with the testing. The DC fight he subbed. I'm not going to hold that one against him. Then he comes back and beats Derek Brunson. But you can just tell, man, this guy's a phenomenal athlete because he's in his 40s and still looks brilliant at times. Not the Anderson Silva at his peak, but still amazing. So could you still make a case for him? Probably, because of the way he tested himself outside the division. The title defenses that he had, he was brilliant as well. I mean, he was all over the place fighting a lot of guys that will go down as legends, Hall of Famers. So, strong case to be made there. I want to let the guys chime in before we dance around John Jones and what he's done over the years, just because I think this is a nice hot topic right now. Guys, any thoughts on Anderson Silva or matching Anderson Silva to what Demetrius Johnson's done?
Well, Dan brought up a pretty interesting point, and that's that when you're really breaking these people down, those little positive tests that loom in the background, I know a lot of them are associated with one fight, but who's to say that guy said, I need this for just this individual, right? We kind of all think, well, maybe he's been doing it all along. So right away, that kind of shuffles him to the back for me when you're talking about people like this. A couple things that stand out with Anderson Silva for me is at the time that he fought Damian Maia was really, really one-dimensional. And you have a jiu-jitsu guy with one eye closed and 3 rounds to go. How do you not finish that guy? That just doesn't seem like the body of work of a champion. Somebody, I just look at, would Demetrius Johnson finish a guy with one eye? That all he's got jiu-jitsu? Probably, I would think. John Jones, I would think, would probably do the same thing. So I shuffle him to the back. Dan, what do you think about Anderson Silva?
I agree with the drug test, especially correlating it with, George laid out a brilliant timeline there of Anderson Silva, given the context behind it. And what would, during that timeline, I'm thinking about, certain agencies coming into the sport and certain things and drop-offs there. But neither here nor there. That's even depth speculation. But yeah, if we're coming down to splitting hairs, DJ would go over Anderson. Anderson more maybe because at the time my fandom was at an all-time high. Where if we're talking about all-time greatest fighter, I may want to put Anderson above a DJ. But again, when DJ is getting better and these information's coming out, whether it's a positive test or this or that, it does make it hard. So I want to presume the best for Anderson. Let me be clear. I want to think the best and be optimistic. But with information that's factual, I got to go with DJ.
All right. Let's go to John Jones. Actually, let's go to John Jones when we come back. Let's take a break and we'll examine John Jones. And again, pair these guys up to Demetrius Johnson. And as been noted before, GSP has a big fight coming up against Michael Bisping. Should he win, he's definitely in the argument, and he's got the credentials where he could unseat Demetrius Johnson. And it'll be interesting to see what he does next. But to win a second title, in another division, that would be pretty amazing. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM, Rush 93. Stay close. We'll be right back.
They pat down TSA agents because they don't know where those people have been, and because they can. They are Gorgeous George and Goes, and this is MMA Junkie Radio.
SiriusXM is now on Amazon Alexa. Just enable the SiriusXM skill, log into your account, and say, quote, Alexa, listen to MMA Junkie Radio on SiriusXM, end quote. And, of course, you can sub in the other favorite shows that you may have on SiriusXM by asking Alexa to put those on. All right, for more information, visit SiriusXM.com/Amazon Alexa. Let's get back to the calls, and then we'll examine John Jones maybe in that second hour. Who do we have, Danny?
We have Chris from the Couve or Vegas Ford. Which one would you like
Chris
to
from the Couve, what's up?
Oh, hey, is that me from the Couve? That's Vancouver, I guess?
Yep.
Oh, cool. So I think probably DJ is the best pound for pound now just because, you know, John Jones testing positive. But I think to compare the two and to say that they're in the same league even is ridiculous. I honestly believe that. You look at their opponents. I had it up in front of me. And, I mean, Demetrius, we're talking Ray Borg and Wilson. He has no strength in opponents whatsoever. Whereas you look at John Jones, it's a who's who of some of the greatest fighters of all time.
Yeah, of course, I've heard that. I've also heard, how many former champions he's beaten. He also had his soft run, though, of opponents, but we'll get into that in just a second. But you're right. When you do match up star power versus star power, John Jones will definitely be ahead. But remember, this is a division that's kind of newer. It's newer by about 15 years. If you want to go to the birth of MMA, there was nothing like it, for many years until they created lower weight classes through the WEC and eventually officially the 125 division, you know, hasn't been in existence for that long, so it doesn't have that type of history. And then the whole time, this guy's been the only champion. So how can he beat other former champions if there hasn't been any other champions other than him? Now, he has beaten Miguel Torres. He was a former champion at 135, so you have to give him that. Torres didn't finish out gracefully, but at one time he was regarded pound for pound #1 by many people, including Frank Mir. So you'll have to give him a few of them. I think Joseph Benavidez has put together quite an amazing career. Even in his losses versus Dominic Cruz, that's quality opposition. Lost.
But it's a loss. But it's a loss.
It is.
It's quality.
It is, but it's to an all-time great as well. So you have to give him that because that's at a weight class that wasn't his. He just had to participate there because there wasn't 25. So when he was there, he didn't necessarily get steamrolled. You're right, though. Go ahead.
I don't think I've heard this sort of angle. I thought about it. Do you think it's easier to go on a run at 125 because there's not as much of a chance of getting knocked out, of getting caught? You know, obviously there's far fewer knockouts, far less punching power in that division, and obviously a lot of people get their, you know, Anderson. A lot of people they'll get caught, and you know, do you think that makes it easier to go on undefeated at 125?
I'd say yeah.
I would say yes from that, but also I would actually argue more so no. Analyzing fights, when I'm talking about flyweight fights from odds and betting, I often tell people that they have similar heavyweights to intangibles. Now, that's not the intangible with heavyweights is they can knock each other out, leaning to your point, Chris. But what I'm saying is that when you have guys that they might not be able to knock each other out, but since they're all very technical because they have to be at that weight class, and you essentially have two technical guys facing two technical guys, no matter their ranking, the swings and the scrambles become much more heavier, and we often see a lot of, from a betting perspective, we see a lot of dogs come through in the flyweight division. So from that standpoint, that information may point to no.
But Dan, his question did start off with the KOs, though. Just isolating the KOs, I think the gentleman that came through a few years ago had stated that, you know, in 10 years of study that he had done, KOs ratio is definitely lower at those weight classes. So just to answer what he's
100%.
Isolating on KOs, that I believe, you know, helps out Demetrius Johnson, especially because he's so fast and he's got, you know, great defense everywhere.
Oh yeah, definitely can't deny that for sure.
I think one guy you got to put one guy in the conversation as well, and that's Tom Johnson from Ridgeway High School, one of the toughest guys I ever met. Thanks for your time, guys. Have a good day.
Shout out to Tom Johnson. Thank you very much for that call. Jason Ford, he's up next. What's up, Ford?
Holy shit, give me a fucking break with this conversation, guys. Mighty Mouse is maybe number 3. Maybe number 3. And this just goes to show you how fickle MMA fans are. That they think that because you match up the Ultimate Warrior versus Duke the Dumpster Drosy and he does something fantastic when he breaks the fucking record, that is something to really, you know, to catapult him, you know, into first. GSP has beat people like Frank Trigg, Sean Shirk, BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, Carlos Condit, Nick Diaz. I mean, the list goes on and on. It goes on and on. And the fact that we haven't even brought up GSP yet, it just goes to show you this whole "what have you done for me lately" culture in MMA, because you know, this bullshit that we're talking about right now is exactly that. I don't understand in what world we live in where Mighty Mouse's accomplishment in cleaning out a division full of cans is anything near what GSP has done. Whether GSP is considered the most boring fighter ever or whatever, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, strength of schedule is what it is.
Ford, you said he might be at number 3. Who are 1 and 2? Would you say it sounds like GSP's one of your votes? Who's the other one?
Man. Well, I mean, John Jones. You know, if you still count him, you know, with his failures. Other than that, it would have to be Anderson.
All right, my man. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you. We got to move on because we have the top of the hour coming up. We will try and squeeze in some more calls in the second hour, but that second hour contains 3 interviews. Lyoto Machida, Johny Hendricks, Michael Johnson, they will all join us. I will keep looking at YouTube and Facebook and incorporating some of your comments. And some of you, hopefully you can call in at 866-522-2846. All right, here we go. It's the second hour of the MMA Junkie Radio Show. We're going to start things off by talking to the Dragon, Lyoto Machida. He is back, folks. He'll be fighting on October 28th, headlining, to be more exact, versus Derek Brunson. We caught up with him a few minutes before the show started. This is a pre-record, being honest, putting our cards out on the table. Without further ado, here's Lyoto Machida. Hello, Lyoto. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you.
All right. How does it feel, man? You're just a couple weeks away from fighting again. Your first love in athletics, to get out there and, of course, perform in front of thousands in the arena and millions at home.
Yeah, it feels great, man. I had a great camp, and I had a great partners here. So I'm ready. I'm ready to put a show over there, Brazil, and always give my best and bring this victory.
Now, you've won... I'm sorry. You've won titles before. You've been in big fights. You've headlined. You've got some big wins in your historical career. However, since you haven't fought in over 2 years, are you feeling nervous, almost like a young guy again, or are you calm and cool and collected?
For sure, it's kind of again because for a long time gap that I have break. I mean, like I have a long break. Now it's time to restart again and do it again. So of course everything's kind of new for me again. But I know that as soon as I step in the octagon, I realize that I already did that before.
Mm-hmm. All right, you faced Derek Brunson, wrestling-based MMA fighter. Of course, he has hands. He can throw as well. He's an MMA fighter. He's evolved now. But either way, what are your thoughts on facing Derek Brunson, the American?
So he's a complete fighter. He's a well-rounded. He drops people with hands too. Of course, his background is in wrestling. But with the camp that I have been doing here, I believe that they can stop his takedowns. And my background is in karate and stand-up fighter. So I believe that I can stop Derek Brunson and bring this victory to my team and my country.
Yeah, if you really look at your resume, C.B. Dalloway, Mark Munoz, Dan Henderson, Ryan Bader, Randy Couture, all of them have a wrestling background. You seem to have done well against wrestlers in the past.
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of fights against wrestlers under my belt. And I know everyone has their own style, it's a different way. But I'm getting used to fight against wrestlers.
Mm-hmm. Lyoto Machida, our guest here on MMA Junkie Radio. Let me send it over to the boys at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Goes and Dan Tom, what do you have for Lyoto Machida?
Lyoto, you've been a lifelong martial artist. During this break, were there any new things that you were able to work on and incorporate into your game, or was this break more about sharpening the tools that you already have?
Of course, we always try to add some different things, some new things in our game. And this time it wasn't different. So I used this break to put some different tools and incorporate different techniques, and also evolve a little bit more my own style, my karate, my stand-up fight.
Mm-hmm. And fighting, coming back from this return, but fighting in your home country, does that make things easier for you, or does it create a more pressure situation?
Oh, both. There is a lot of pressure, of course, because I'm going to fight in my country. But on the other hand, I have a lot of support. I can feel that through social media, through interviews that I have been doing. So I can feel that I have a lot of support in Brazil, and at the same time a lot of pressure. But I have to handle with that and do my best. Just keep my focus on what I have to do there.
Right on, Lyoto. Now, I guess I have a question about Derek Brunson and your opponent. Not only is he a wrestler, but he's also a fellow southpaw. Now, you can fight out of both stances, but do you have a preference, Lyoto, as far as striking goes? Do you prefer orthodox guys, or do you prefer the options that a southpaw opponent presents?
most of my opponents were orthodox fighters. But I'm getting used to fight against southpaw as well, and also I have a lot of partners here that can help me with southpaw style. And so I believe that it's not going to make a difference in our fights, for me especially.
Awesome. And I guess the other obvious threat that George touched on was Derek Brunson's wrestling. Now, I know you've worked with Kenny Johnson in particular, who's a great coach for wrestling for MMA at Black House. Can you touch more on working your wrestling and ground game and who you're working with for this camp?
So I've been working with Eric Abahasin and Marky Munoz for this camp. I already trained a lot with Kenny Johnson, but this time I didn't go to Black House that much because I put more my focus on Kings MMA, the place that I have been going every day. And there I can find Mark Munoz, the guy that I already fought. We get along with each other. And also Eric Abahasin. Eric Abahasin is one of the best coach that I have been met in my life, and he's teaching me a lot. He's going to be in my corner in Brazil.
Lyoto Machida, our guest here on MMAjunkie Radio. The Dragon is back on October 28th at the Ibirapuera Gymnasium in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He faces Derek Brunson, of course, Colby Covington versus Damian Maia, Rob Font versus Pedro Munoz, Francisco Trinaldo versus Jim Miller. Hey, Lyoto, I mean, you live in the United States, but it's funny how the UFC kind of tends to do these Brazil versus the world, or in this case, it's basically Brazil versus the United States here on the main card. How do you feel about that? You like it when they line up the countries?
Yeah, I think it's good because, especially now, because I'm going to fight in Brazil. The fight's going to take a place in Brazil, and I can be in the upper hand, so I can have more advantage against Derek Brunson when comes about round. And I feel like it's good sometimes to have some good rivalry between countries because we can push so hard during the training, push so hard to the competition get more strong. So I believe that's going to be good for the sports.
Lyoto, my last question is this. We heard during the Claudia Gadelha fight versus Jessica Andrade had said that some of the fans in Brazil had turned a little bit on Gadelha because she had moved to the United States. She was no longer using, the teams and the coaches available in Brazil. You also made a move to the United States. Have you ever felt a backlash from the Brazilian media or Brazilian fans that
not at all.
No? Okay.
Not at all, because I get along with everybody in Brazil. Even my former coaches, my former academies, and all the people in Brazil. Every time when I go to Brazil, I go often in Brazil, and every time when I go to Brazil, I talk good with people, and I feel good, man. I feel a lot of support from Brazil, and I believe that, of course, I moved to the United States 5 years ago, but I love my country. I'm Brazilian, and I have to defend my country. But I love to be here with people too. I love America, but it's a competition. It has nothing to do with something that you have to choose. So I can be here and treat good with people here, and go to Brazil and be surrounded by good people too, and good environment and good energy. I think that's the way that I deal with people.
Lyoto, real quick, is it almost as simple as this? The training is about the same in Brazil and the United States, with the exception of there's just a little bit more wrestling resources in the United States? Is it as simple?
Yeah, the United States is more practical. Everything is easy to do. So you can move to one state to another state. You can bring someone from another state. You can find a lot of wrestlers here. So you have more support here than Brazil, of course. But when I was in Brazil, it was good. But for me, to be here, I think I can keep more focused, because I have a lot of friends in Brazil, and every time when I'm in Brazil, I like to be with my friends, and sometimes it takes my focus away. So in preparation, I prefer to be here. But I love to go to Brazil every time. Every time when I have a chance, I'm in Brazil to see everybody over there and to enjoy and train too. Sometimes I go there to train, but when I have a fight coming up, I prefer to be all by myself or with my family. Otherwise, I can lose my focus. That's the only reason that I prefer to train here.
Folks, he's back. The Dragon, Lyoto Machida, on October 28th, was just a couple weeks away. UFC Fight Night 119 in Sao Paulo, Brazil versus Derek Brunson. Lyoto, thank you very much for the time. Good luck with the rest of your camp. Safe travels to Brazil, and good luck at UFC Fight Night 119.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'll have a great fight in Brazil. I'm sure about that, and I'll see you around, guys.
Okay, thank you, Lyoto. Take care. All right, folks, that is Lyoto Machida, former UFC light heavyweight champion, current UFC middleweight. He hasn't fought since June of 2015, so think about that layoff. Pushing 2.5 years, and he fights Derek Brunson, who is definitely no slouch, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, October 28th. It's a few weeks away. Also on that card, our boy Colby Covington. He'll be meeting Damian Maia. Pivotal fight. You know, Maia can get right back into it if he starts scoring some wins. You know, his style's not as fan-friendly. I'm not sure the UFC's too crazy to keep putting him in those types of matchups. So, but he gets the job done. You got to give him his credit. So we'll see if he can do that again, start a new streak, or if it's Colby Covington's time. You know, Colby's a little bit more of a talker. He's younger. He's a little bit more brash. So this definitely could be a huge night for him. Lyoto can be followed on Twitter at Lyoto Machida FW. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that interview, and thank you to Fabiola for lining that one up. Guys, what'd you think, man? He seems like he's in pretty good spirits for someone who hasn't fought in 2.5 years, but, you know, obviously it was unfortunate that he put himself in that position, but at the end of the day, he should be a pretty fresh fighter. I mean, it's a lot of wear and tear that he didn't put on his body, and that division kind of shook itself out. He could become an instant contender with a few wins.
Yeah, I think he's always right up there at the top, and the time off was probably the best thing, especially after some of those fights. Some of those wars that we remember, like the Chris Weidman fight. Remember, we were there for that one, and just the noises that were bouncing off of each other's bodies from kicks, punches, elbows. I think the time off will probably serve him well, and like he said, he's working on some new stuff, so you never know. You talked about that Anderson Silva kick. I remember he threw one too against Randy, so who knows what else he has in his arsenal.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that King's MMA shakes out for him too, guys, how that works out, the camp change.
Yeah, as we noted in the interview, he's done well against wrestlers, but think about it. Jacare experienced the loss while Lyoto was gone. So did Romero. Mousasi moved over to Bellator. Dan Henderson retired. Weidman went through a recent spell where he was losing fights until he recently came up on Chris Weidman. Anderson Silva, who was never really, I don't think, a possible opponent, he's kind of just out of the way. And now he'll basically have a shot to fight Bisping and GSP, or one of those two guys, as long as he keeps winning. I would recommend him to stay busy. If he can get past Brunson, take another fight. But if he takes another fight, he's marketable. He's a former champion. He could be right back in the mix.
Definitely, definitely. I was really interested that little stat he gave on, mainly facing orthodox opponents, because I looked, guys, and his last two opponents were losses, and they were southpaw opponents. And then aside from a few names in Japan, you have to go all the way back to his fight with Rich Franklin for his last victory over a southpaw fighter, which is pretty far back.
Let's take a break, folks. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Rush 93. We, of course, have a few more interviews lined up, but we are going to find some pockets to get you all in, I promise. 866-522-2846. From what I hear, we got a couple of big sluggers on deck, so we will definitely be taking some calls from Junkie Nation. Stay close, folks. We'll be right back.
What time is it? It's showtime.
They are the stretch marks on the underbelly of the MMA community. But hey, stretch marks are the new tats. They are Gorgeous George and Goes.
All right, we're ready to go with our next guest, former 3-time high school state wrestling champion, 2-time NC2A national champion, 4-time All-American, and former UFC welterweight champion, Johny Hendricks, joins us now on the hotline. What's up, Johnny? How you doing?
Nada, how y'all doing today?
Man, we're doing great. We always love talking to you. So thank you for the time, as always.
Hey, no, thank you. Like I said, hey, I'm always open for you guys.
Thank you, sir. So obviously the big news was you rolling into Albuquerque. You posted up some pics. You did the drive from Texas to neighboring state, New Mexico. What brought on that decision?
It was a little bit of everything. Like, you know, that Tim Bosch, I feel like I should have. That was a fight for me. You know what I mean? I should have been able to do way better than I did. Let's be honest. And it's just hard to get training partners. And I really didn't want to leave my kids, but you know, it's to a point where do I want to just compete or do I want to win again? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And for me to be the best I know I can be better. I know I can fight better. I've proven it, but I got to do it consistently now, right? And that's sort of my problem is one camp might be really good, but the next one sucks. And the reason why is because I can't get any trainer partners. So whenever all that happened, you know, I got a hold of Winklejohn and said, hey, would you mind if I came out there? And he was like, let me talk to the guys. He talked to them and said, no, I will. You know, they all said, that sounds great. I went out there, trained, you know, I think I did 6 sparring sessions in a week. Or I mean 12. I sparred 12 times in a week. Sometimes that's what my whole camp is. You know, so I was, you know, by the end of the week, I'm starting to pick up things. I'm starting to feel things. Oh, I was doing this, but really I should have been doing this. And not only that, but you know, after talking with the guys, getting to know everybody, I just took a step back. I said, this is where I need to be. You know, if I want to do what I want to do, I have to make that sacrifice. And my wife was on board with it. You know, she's like, if you're going to keep fighting, we got to do something different because what you're doing now isn't working.
Geographically, was it just the easiest call to make? Why did you choose Jackson Wink? Why did you make the call to Winklejohn where you could have done it to other gyms across America?
Well, one, I've been across from Jackson and Winklejohn. How many fights? You know, and some of the things that they coach on that I remember whenever I'm fighting their guys is things that I'm going, I see what you're doing. You know, I know that what you're trying to do to sort of shut my offense down. So they know how I fight. Like I said, they've been in the opposite corner of me a couple of times, so they sort of know how I fight, where I was, right, and where I want to get to. So I figured that was an easy way, and plus, I got a friend that got me in contact with them, and I was just like, why not try out Jackson's first? Because, you know, whenever you step into a gym, you don't know how it's going to go. And but whenever I walked in, you know, I said it. I stayed afterwards. I talked to people, and it just felt like it fit. You know, it fit, and I got great training. Coach Jackson, I talked to him, and you know, the plans that we have for me, I think can, you know, hopefully it's a better, more improved. You know, we're adding things to my weapons, and also some things I really can't go into details about, but what like our game planning, you know, and we're able to execute that through having partners, through having the sparring sessions that we have.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you said they had to make a couple calls or maybe talk it up as a team, does that mean obviously talking to the other welterweights, Condit, Cowboy, everybody else that's there, just to make sure it's not a conflict, or was it just amongst coaches? Do you know what side of it that was? And then part two of that question is, Johnny, I know that's a gym that's got a deep roster. Do you know, big names like yourself mix it up with those other big names that I mentioned, or do you guys kind of stay away from each other and maybe you fight some of the younger fighters or train with some of the younger fighters that are still rising through the scene?
Well, it's a little bit of both, right? And that's the beauty of it. You know, I'm going with some guys who do have some names, right? And I'm also going with guys that don't. And and I think that's what's going to really elevate my game. Because, excuse me, you know, you're going to go with a guy who knows how to strike, and then the next round he may not know. You know, he's into it, but he hasn't learned all the fundamentals yet. So you have to figure him out very quickly, or it could be a long 5 minutes for you. And that's one thing that I like, is that I always have to be on my toes. You know, perfect example, if me and you are sparring, by the second round, I would know where you're at. You know, where at Jackson's, the second round, he could be better striker than you went with first, or he could be not as good, because, like you said, he's a newcomer, he's coming up, and he's not as fine-tuned as the other guy. So you're constantly adapting on the go.
Mm-hmm. Johny Hendricks, our guest here on MMA Junkie Radio. He does have a fight coming up at UFC 217 versus Paolo Borrachinha. They're featured on the prelims, FS1, 8 p.m. Eastern start time. All right, let me send it over to the boys at the Mandalay Bay. Goes and Dan Tom, what do you have for Johny Hendricks?
Mr. Hendricks, is there a training partner that you gelled with right away when you first got to Jackson's?
You know, I talked to Condit quite a bit, and Cowboy. You know, I was staying at his place. You know, he was kindly enough to open his doors to me, and you know, that sort of has been a good fit. You know, and that's another thing, is like, whenever I talk about these coaches, they, like I said, they already sort of knew who I was and what kind of fighter I could be, right? Mm-hmm. And whenever you throw in them getting to see me spar 12 times, then they like by Thursday, Jackson already had a sort of an idea of what he wanted me to do, right? Like what I should be looking for the next 3 weeks and for the future. And that's, you know, not only my coach, but also out there, the coaches that I just sort of brought up or got in touch with. It feels like everything's sort of fallen into place for me.
Do you feel like this is a long-term solution for you? Like, in other words, if you get a win here, would you want to continue doing this, or was this something that you just wanted to give a try?
No. I'm going to continue to go back there. It's too good of a gym to not go back to. You know, and I think it's only going to better me. The more I go there, I'm going to become a better fighter, right? You know, perfect example. Like I said, in 1 week, you're sparring 12 times. Well, sometimes you know, I'm only able to go 50% with some of the guys in Texas, because you know, I want them to come back. You know what I mean? Where they all want to be the best. They all want to test themselves. So you spar with them. Well, guess what? The next day that is sparring, they're going, "Hey, can I get another shot at you?" To see if, you know what I mean, see if they've improved or if they can get the better hand that day. They have that type of drive in that gym, and that's sort of what you know, my coach wanted and I needed.
Yeah, Johnny, you know, I like how you're touching on staying on your toes in regards to your training partners. Now, I have to imagine that's going to help you for your upcoming fight, because when you look at Paulo Bohachinia, I mean, from his physique to his record, it's impressive, but when you really look at his fights, we don't know a lot about the guy. We haven't seen him in a lot of areas, whereas you have 5-round experience against multiple different opponents. Now, you can't give us your game plan, Johnny, but maybe can you tell us a bit about your approach, not just going to Brazil to fight, but fighting a young kid like this? You know, do you want to show him some things, test him like you test your training partners, or how's your approach there?
Yeah, it's really that. You know, first off, he's only been out of the first round once, and that was a minute into it. You know, one thing I do know is I fight the best when people come after me. You know, every time somebody tries to say, hey, I'm going to stand toe-to-toe with you and not back up, that's why I've had a lot of success. So if he wants to try to play that game with me, I want that, right? He's not going to be able to bully me around like he does most people. You know, going back to the last fight, that's what Tim Boach said he was going to do. He was going to bully me, right? But once they get in there and they feel that I do, you know, even though I'm a little bit smaller and I was a welterweight, I have more power than they think. So I'm hoping that he stays true to that game plan. But that's also something that I'm working on, too, is with Jackson and Winklejohn, they're sort of, you know, I have a boxing coach, which boxing is a little bit different than MMA. But he's, you know, if they can add in a little tricks how to close that gap, it's going to benefit me for the long run. You know, now people are going to say, okay, we can't stand in front of him and fight, and if you bail, you have to bail, you know. And then for the judges, how does that look? You know, if a guy just slowly bails, that doesn't look so bad, and that's sort of what I've struggled with, is people slowly bailing. You know, and so some of the things that we're working on is that right there, making them really bail, so that way it looks better in my favor.
Now, Johnny, I noticed on social media you posted a picture of your little boy getting ready for soccer. Great picture, by the way. I know your family has grown since when we used to you know, run with you here in Vegas and you'd co-host the show. So obviously I know that was a difficult decision. Now, does this mean like you full-time broke away just to isolate yourself till November, or because of the proximity, you know, probably an hour flight, are you able to fly back and forth? How have you decided to do that?
Yeah, that's so the next camp, that's what I'm going to do. Right? So what I plan on doing is in a 12-week camp, I'm going to spend 6 weeks out here. And I'm going to really dedicate myself to becoming the fighter that I was, right? I said I wanted to, but I didn't make the sacrifices. Sometimes in life you have to make hard decisions and tough sacrifices. And this is definitely one of them. But whenever that happens, you know, I will fly back home or just drive back home. You know, now that I have a place to stay, I don't have to pull my camper. Being able to go to Cowboys, that plays a big factor in things. So, you know, I can jump on Friday after workouts, drive home, be home for the weekend, get to watch some soccer, drive back, and be ready to practice on Monday. You know, if I really miss my family, which, you know, I won't do that every weekend, but for some of my weekends, it's something that I have to do. And if I have to fly home for the weekend, so be it. Whatever's easiest, you know. And for me, it became a no-brainer after that last fight. For me, was I gotta mix it up. I know I'm still a great fighter. I can't prove it because I don't get the work that I need, right? But at Jackson's, I'm getting the work that I need. I'm getting everything that I need, and I think it only benefits me, and it'll further my career, I think, as well.
Johnny, last thing here. I started the interview by talking about the accolades, you know, you accomplished starting with wrestling. And obviously we know that from day one, or not day one, but from very early age you started wrestling. So when I look at your age of 34, I don't just look at a 34-year-old mixed martial artist. I look at 30-plus combat sports athlete. Is your body still feeling healthy? You know, all the pieces still hanging on there? Any of them falling off? I know you probably wouldn't want to share and give too much away for future opponents, but how do you feel after all these years?
You know what? That's the thing, is that I've been blessed. God blessed me with a body that can take what I've done to it. I know in further in my life I will have aches and pains, right? But as of right now, my body has been very, it's been it's held on very well, better than I thought, because I thought by 33 I'd have to be done. By 32, I thought I'd have to be done because of so much pain that you push through wrestling. But what I'm starting to learn now is how to train better. Going to Jackson's, that's another thing that opened my eyes. Like this fight camp, I've been doing a little bit different than any other one. It's been more, hey, we're going to come in here, we're going to bust our butts, and then we're going to recover. One thing that I like about Jackson's too is that they have people that can work on you there. So after practice, you got something that's not feeling right. They do their job, and by the next day, it's almost healed. It feels like. So I think that's going to further my career as well. Just training smarter, harder and smarter, but doing it in the right fashion.
Johnny, thanks as always for the time, man. It's great to hear this. That's a great team that you're with. They definitely have molded many champion from the start of the career, and they've also resurrected many careers of fighters who have had, coming off a loss or a couple losses. So I think you're in great hands. It's close to home, so you can get back and forth like you need to. This is all just great news, and we expect a great fight with you and Paulo Borrachina at UFC 217. So thanks for spending some time with us. It's always a great catch-up, and good luck with the rest of your camp.
Hey, thank you so much, and y'all have a wonderful day.
All right, you too, Johnny. Folks, follow him on Twitter at Johny Hendricks. Johnny with one N, Johny Hendricks. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Michael Johnson. We're also going to sneak in a couple calls there with some of the junkies that are on hold. Stay close.
Hey, idiot! Yeah, you. Can you please tap that rather large fellow on the shoulder and tell him it's time for more MMA Junkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Goes? Thank you.
For the first time since 1986, the United States men's national team has failed to qualify for the World Cup. SiriusXM FC 85, Channel 85, is reacting to the shocking turn of events and exploring the impact it will have on soccer in the United States. SiriusXM FC, Channel 85, soccer all day, every day. Goes, did you happen to hear Taylor Twellman and Hercules Gomez go off on ESPN?
I had seen some tweets from Hercules, but I heard a couple people go off on Alexi Lawless, but I haven't heard what Taylor Twellman said. What were their takes?
Oh, nothing. Just, I mean, complete, like, good meltdowns, you know, but just real raw honesty of what needs to happen and how much it set the team back. But Channel FC 85 has you covered. If we can fit in some more talk towards the end, great. And if not, then that'll be good. But let's get to some phone calls here that we may have to sneak in before we get to Michael Johnson, our last guest of the day. What's up, Hal from Chicago?
Guys, I want anybody who's talking about Demetrius Johnson being pound-for-pound best fighter, kind of like Goes, to write it down, put a little note, something, remember it. Next time that John Jones fights or some of these other guys, people talk about pound-for-pound, because people seem to forget. It's like you have to fight every time and remind people.
And when's that fight scheduled, Hal? The John Jones fight? I'm looking at the calendar. Oh, 4 years. Why is that? Why is it? Yeah. Why is it 4 years from now? Is it because he's so good, or?
Yeah, and when that happens, you're going to be all over him, man. And you're going to. You got 3 fights. You got 3 fights in 10 years. You know what I mean? But and the same with Frankie, man. That's another guy who doesn't get enough love. And I'm happy to see that on December 2nd in Detroit, Frankie's going to get that title, like I always knew he would. What do you guys think about that?
That's a great point. Yeah. You know, if Edgar's got he's one of those guys. He's one of like maybe a handful of guys that could possibly win 3 titles, and this is realistic talk. So obviously he is fighting for the 45-pound belt against Max Holloway. We'll see how that goes. But he's always stated he'd like to give 35 one shot, but he wanted to win the 45-pound belt first. So interesting if he could ever pull that off. I mean, Holloway just seems to be on another level right now, and a lot of guys are going to hunt him down. We'll see how Frankie does, but that's interesting you bring that up, because one thing that can definitely put you in pound-for-pound talk or GOAT talk is multiple division titles.
Oh, yeah, man. All right, guys, we'll let Showtime get in.
All right, easy. All right, we'll see it later. All right, we will get to Showtime in just a bit. Right now we're going to talk to Michael Johnson, one of the top lightweights in the world, who has recently announced that featherweight may be his next destination. So as we've done in the past, maybe we can hunt down a matchup for him. What's up, Menace? How you doing?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing today?
Good, man. Welcome back to MMA Junkie Radio. It's great to have you back. So it's official, right? You are dropping the 45, or is that still being contemplated?
Well, I mean, it's not official until they give me a fight first, so that's going to make it official. But, man, I'm just training, and I'm looking for fights. I'm looking for fights at 45. I'm looking for fights at 55. But, you know, these fights got to make sense. So they got to put me in a position to where I was at before these losses, you know, so.
Right. So, obviously, if the matchmaker sends you a fight, you're going to look at the name, and in your mind, I'm sure you already have to know what kind of fights make sense and what kind of fights don't. So, let's just go to the end of the book here. Forget all the chapters in between. What are some of those names that make sense for you?
Well, I mean, you guys obviously know about the first 2 names of featherweight that I wanted to fight, and they got booked, and they're fighting other guys. So, but I mean, you know, the guys need to be at the top of the divisions. You know, in the top 10. You know, I've fought so many people at 55 over and over again, and you know, it was just like a waste of time almost. I can't do that at 45. You know, I'm 31. You know, I'm not at a point where I want to fight everybody in the 45 division. No, I need to fight the top guys, and I need to get in there and get out you know, get my title shot down there. So that makes sense. But I mean, so I don't know who's sitting around that little area, you know, to even call out some names. So we'll see what
did
Sean.
Jose Aldo officially get booked yet?
I don't know if it officially, but he said he was fighting Ricardo Lamas.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what we heard too. But I don't know that I've heard anything official. But obviously, if they can't make that fight happen, both of those names have to be would be approved by you, right?
You know they'll be approved by me. You know it's a yes. I mean, if Aldo and Ricardo didn't get booked officially already, then I'd love to fight either one of them. You know, whichever one says yes to me. You know, I think it's gotten to a time where everybody at the top of the 45 division is fighting each other already. Nobody wants to see those rematches again down there. So a new face, a new look, and some new excitement down in 45, and it sounds perfect.
What about something like what Gilbert Melendez did? He fought Jeremy Stevens. He's been around for a long time. There's also names like Yair Rodriguez. He's coming off a loss versus Frankie Edgar. There's Hanato Moicano, Mirsad Bektik, Darren Elkins, Chan Sung Jung. I don't believe any of those have fight bookings yet. So if we put Lamas and Aldo to the side, which one of those names jumps off the page to you?
Yeah, any of them, dude, man. Like I said, I'm in this to fight the best, and you know, get my shot. I think we've mentioned some of those names to them, and we haven't heard anything back yet. So I'm in a position now where I'm pretty much went into a training camp. You know, I'm preparing myself for a fight to come across the desk. I'm preparing myself for a late-minute replacement. You know, so I'm in a position where, you know, I'm not fucking around or wasting any more time. I need to refocus myself and, you know, get back to chasing greatness and getting closer. So as of now, I'm in training camp and I'm ready for a fight.
How soon could you fight?
Hey, you guys know me. I can fight this weekend if there's a fight card and I needed to. But, you know, like I said, December is the perfect timeline for me. So like I said, anywhere from, you know, next month to December, I'll be ready.
And you can make 45 in December, correct?
Yeah, correct. I'm a professional. And the first thing that we have to do as professionals is make weight in this business, you know, and that's part of the game. You know, if you're missing weight, you're not clocking in what you need to, and that's pretty much unprofessional. So, you know, I hold myself very high in the, you know, winning that first battle, and that's making weight.
Have you done a test run before, Michael, or do you just know, like, has the doctor already told you, according to your body fat percentage or, you know, your hydration levels? Like, I love the certainty you speak of, but I guess is there anything you can tell us in regards to either your past, or have you ever done a test run that leads you to believe that this is a slam dunk?
Yeah, this might be good for your past. During my whole camp for Dustin Poirier and Khabib, I was training at like 163, 164. Okay. So that gives you guys a little clearer head on if I can make 45. Then that should be a little bit. You know, I was doing my camps around that weight, and I fought those guys, and I think I performed well until I got into some trouble with Khabib. But you know, yeah, like I said, I'll have energy. I'll be ready to go.
Just to clear things up, you haven't closed the door on 55. If there's a great matchup, you'll take it. But otherwise, December, 145 pounds, Michael Johnson's in.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely didn't close the door on my home weight class. And, you know, don't miss me from that weight class at all, because there is no certainty that I'll stay at 45. And there's definitely no certainty that I won't come back up to 55 after I get done at 45. You know, that's one thing in my head. You know, I'll bounce back up at 4. But I want to get down there. I want to win a title at 45, defend it, and then, you know, come back up, see what's going on.
All right, goes you and Dan Tom over at the Mandalay Bay. What do you have for Michael Johnson?
Michael Johnson, that last battle with Justin Gaethje, I mean, it was a war. It was a great fight. Are there any positives you can take from that type of fight, though?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I don't want to. I don't want to just to sound like anything like I'm. There's no positives I can take from that fight. I mean, I had the guy to beat, and I should have finished him a couple of times. I don't know if anybody notices or mentions this. I was knocked out that whole fight, man, from that fucking headbutt I caught in the first round. And I really wish that it would have got paused or stopped, or maybe my own toughness held me back from turning away and calling a timeout for getting headbutted. But, you know, I took a really bad one, and I took another one. And I don't remember much from that fight at all. I was just fighting on my reactions and pretty much what I needed to do. And, you know, and the rest is history after that. So I just need to stay focused and do what I need to do and close the show.
How long did it take you after the fight to recover physically and to recover mentally?
Man, I was back training after a week. You know, I just needed my leg to, I needed the swelling from my leg to go down. And that was pretty much it. So after that went down, and I got right back in the gym. And, it kind of sounds strange, but I went back and I started kicking a lot more because I didn't do that at all that fight. And I think that definitely would have made the difference if I was kicking or if I was checking kicks. So, yeah, after a week, man, I went right back to the gym, and that's all I did. I didn't put on my gloves for 2 weeks after that training. Like, all I did was kick. Kicks, knees, and wrestling. And, you know, that if you want to take a positive from that fight, then that's a positive. You know, it got me to go back and work on the things that I know always had me successful.
Michael, the one thing we all know is that you're a great competitor in the cage, but something that a lot of people don't know is how well you are outside the cage. We've had you co-host before. The Fox Sports Desk, man, I want to see you there more. I think you could be really good at that. Have you thought about that? Has Fox reached out at all?
I would love to do that, and you know, that's definitely one of the things on my list. Fox has not reached out to me. And it's one of those things where they're not going to reach out to me unless I try to do some groundwork and get seen by these guys. You know, I definitely love co-hosting. I love coming to Vegas and co-hosting. I'll do that anytime I'm out there. I love hosting any shows, but I think I need to put myself in a position for Fox to see that. And, you know, I thought they would have caught a glimpse of it, you know, when I was on set for them a few times. But, no, they haven't reached out to me yet. So let's hope they're hearing this. Let's hope they're listening to this interview, and I'll get a call once we get off the phone.
Well, speaking of extracurricular duties and even that, you know, lean on the analysis a bit, I recently saw you cornering for your boy Des Green there, and I believe on his most recent fight. Can you maybe speak to that? Is that because you guys are friends, or is cornering, you know, fellow teammates something that you could see yourself maybe doing more in the future?
Yeah, we're definitely friends. We're really close. And, you know, I've always been close to him to help him in his fight. As far as me, I'm a corner, and I love to do that. You know, I love being a team player. I love helping the guys on my team be successful. And I love, like, just spreading my knowledge, you know, getting the knowledge that I have and watching fights and trying to have them succeed. You know, that's what I love to do, and it's one of my passions. So that's definitely in the future, and, you know, it has been a thing. It's just a thing where, you know, when you have coaches and guys fighting, well, unfortunately, I'm not a coach, so I don't fall in that position. A coach is going to take my spot. But if the guys need me, if they need my help, if they need my assistance, then I'm always there to help them. You know, I'm always there to corner them. I'm always there to fly with them around the world, be there for a week, however long they need me. You know, I think that's important for a fighter.
Awesome.
You know, to have a guy there to help them be comfortable.
Awesome. Well, one last quick question, Michael, on the note of coaches. We know you work with Henry Hoofd. He's a great coach. We've had him here before. But is there anybody you're working in particular for your ground or your wrestling right now?
Yeah, man, Greg Jones. You know, me and him have been wrestling for a while. He's our wrestling coach down there. And, you know, he's doing some incredible work. You know, we got Kami down there helping us out a lot now, which is very good. He came in with Robbie. but he's doing a lot of stuff with me wrestling-wise as well. And for my jiu-jitsu, you know, I bounce back and forth. I use Gilbert Durinho a lot. You know, he's the guy that helps us. And, you know, I go to George Santiago still, and, you know, a few of the other Brazilians down here. So I'm trying, man. You know, I'm trying to step my game up everywhere I can. So if I need to do jiu-jitsu for months and months in, and that's what I need to do to get better.
All right, Michael, it's great doing a catch-up with you. Once you lock something in, we'll see if we can get you mid-camp. In the meantime, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon, brother. Thanks for the time.
All right, perfect. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, folks, if you're on hold, we will squeeze you in. We are going to do a couple minutes of overtime. Otherwise, SiriusXM audience, you will get more combat sports and entertainment, so keep it locked on 93. And, of course, we'll be back tomorrow with another show. Evan Dunham will be in studio. Soft exit. We'll be back in about 15 seconds with more MMA Junkie Radio.
I'm gonna keep on the run. I'm gonna have me some fun. It cost me my very last dime. If I wind up broke, well, I'll always remember that I had a swing in time. I'm gonna give it everything I've got. Lady luck, please let the dice stay high.
Guys, clear for overtime.
All right, so just a couple minutes here, just as we wrap up. Everybody who hangs out with us for these extra few minutes, thank you for doing that. Showtime, a caller that we love catching up with, I think is one of the ones on hold. What's up, Showtime? It's your time.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Showtime. Watching you?
Oh, nothing much, man. Just working as usual, man. I didn't get a chance to call in on Monday, kind of give, you know, my perspective of the fights this past weekend, man. That was a hell of a card, man. I'm pissed that I didn't get a chance to get out there because I had planned on coming in. Things just kind of went crazy about midweek, and then I was feeling kind of sick, you know, up until Saturday, so I didn't get a chance to make it, man. But I think, man, I got some inboxes like, hey, your boy K. Lee lost, so you hadn't called in. I'm like, oh, no, I'm going to call in, man. I love the way he performed, man. He had a bad weight cut, man, but that kid is going to be good, man. If you look at a lot of the fighters that were his age and the fights that they may have lost, you know, and the streak that he went on, I think that was a good learning experience for him, man. Fighting a hell of a fighter, which I'm a Ferguson fan as well, so I really kind of hated both of them fighting. But I think he'll learn and grow from that.
I agree. I mean, this is a guy that when he wants to, he will put you on your ass. He slams you. We know his submission game's tight. The straight right was looking good. In the past, he's obviously used his kickboxing to put Trinaldo down. So little by little, he just keeps getting better. I'm sure the weight cut, was a big wake-up call in case he needs to tighten it up and stay at 55, or if it's the eventual move to 70. But he gained a lot of experience. I think he paid a lot of respect towards Tony. The kid really handled himself like a professional. I was proud of him. And, you know, all you can do is pick up the pieces, learn, and come back strong. And I think he's one of those guys that's capable of doing it because he's done it every single time. He's experienced the loss. He's come back and gotten better.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I was just looking at something that his coach had posted. He posted that he really wanted him to, that they hadn't made a decision. You know, he, liked him at 55. So you're right. Maybe it's a couple things he can, tighten up a little bit to make that weight cut a little bit easier. But, having that staff, man, that's what I was scared about, man, when I heard Joe Rogan them talking about that looked like staff, about him gassing. I mean, because he easily could have won that fight, man. And any other guy but, El Kukui, man, that can take that type of punishment and, and basically get stronger as the fight goes on, man, that El Kukui is going to be hell for anybody, especially, if Conor takes that fight, man, with this guy's fucking, he like the Energizer bunny, that little bunny that just fucking keep going. That's really what this guy reminds me of, man. And a guy like Conor, that he'll have to knock him out in the first round, and he wouldn't win that fight. He'll wear him down and choke him out, or there's only one way I think Conor could win that fight, and that's by knockout. And El Kukui,
has several ways he could win that fight.
Yeah, it was really, really a great fight. I enjoyed it. The card, had some setbacks throughout the week on fight day. But in the end, man, MMA usually delivers, and I had a great time, and nothing better than the main event.
What are you laughing at?
Showtime, thank you, as always, for the call and the support.
Oh, okay, guys.
All right, easy Showtime.
See you, Showtime.
What is going on in the studio? Did Mudley get on
I don't know.
on one of the speakers? What's all that?
I'm laughing at the question you asked, Danny.
Hey, you guys.
Oh, my gosh.
There's so much more to cover with that question, but Danny just kind of gave you a quick answer.
He did, yeah. Anybody else on hold, Danny, or are we good?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, then let me just do this, because Danny said he's got 5-10 minutes, so we have about 3 or 4 left. Just to finish out Anderson, Demetrius, and Jones. We went through Anderson's record, but I just wanted to go through Jones's a little bit. Obviously, he came through with Guzman, Bonner, and O'Brien. Looked great. The setback against Hamill, we won't hold that against him. I don't think the call was wrong, but that was a fight he was clearly winning, and he didn't need to do his those elbows. He would have had his hand raised anyway. Vera, he crushed. I remember he broke the eye socket. Matyshenko then submits Bader. All good. Then he gets through the run of former champions, which has really, really been a strong argument for people, and I don't disagree with him. Hua, Jackson, Machida, and Evans. But if we are going to kind of split hairs a little bit, 2 of those guys, actually 3 of them, wound up going down to 185 eventually. 2 of them have. Rashad's done it twice. Machida's stayed down there since he left. Hua has been thought that he could go there. He just never has. Belfort for sure, and Sonnen were middleweights. They both dabbled with some light heavyweight, but I think in the end, when size mattered, that's kind of where they belonged. Of course, he had the close call against Alexander Gustafsson, smoked Teixeira, close fight with Cormier, but he clearly won that first decision, clearly beat Ovin St. Preux. So he has had some names, guys. And I remember, I'm talking about at the time it happened, for sure, a lot of those wins were solid wins. We're not gonna say, oh, look how Quinton wound up, or look how anybody else wound up. We can't say that, because at the time Quinton deserved this shot. Everybody who faced him deserved this shot. But there have been some names there where, they I don't know that they were any different than what Johnson gets critiqued for, like Elliott and Hayes and Borg. Probably. I mean, Hayes maybe. I mean, Borg I think was probably number 1 contender. Hayes and Elliott, no, we know that. Dodson had earned his second rematch. Horiguchi might have been too soon. For sure, we got force-fed Cariaso. So, I don't know. It's a great argument to have, but right now, Johnson just has that last scoreboard. You know what I mean?
I agree, and I just want to say this. I'm glad you brought this up, George, and the Jones timeline, because that's one thing I wanted to touch with the callers earlier, where I get where guys like Ford's coming from on how fickle we are. Not only do I get it, I agree with him. Even Hal was kind of touching on that, too. I agree with those guys, but one thing is the best crux of their argument is they're comparing rosters, and I will say this might not be a popular opinion, but since George just brought back the resume, I was always one to challenge Jones' resume. I was really upset. When you think about the Brandon Vera fight, that amongst that stretch, like I started out being a very big Jones fan before all the personal stuff came about him, but I remember being upset because I knew how good this guy was. I know this guy's good. Yeah. Why can't we have him in the best matchups? They were giving him guys like Matyshenko in that run, and one of the best names in that early chapter was Vera, but Vera, and I'm a fan of Brandon Vera, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he was already on his inconsistent run that ended up being his career, and I believe that you actually can make those arguments, though. Rampage and Shogun obviously deserved to be there, obviously, but those guys, you can't tell me that there wasn't a decline after that. Now Shogun's a little sketchier, right? Because he's quietly put together a 4-fight win streak. But let's be honest. Let's look back at it. Hasn't been quite the same 2005 Shogun since that John Jones fight, and so forth. So there are holes you can pick at the John Jones one. And yes, of course, he was fighting middleweights, blown up middleweights, etc. And when these guys had the opportunity to go up, they would vocally say, I don't know about that matchup. John Jones said that about Stipe, even though apparently that was going to be the UFC's next step. And when you have guys like GSP or John Jones that say, I'm not sure, and then you guys have guys like Anderson or BJ that just says, point the direction. I tend to side with those guys more. So that's just my argument as far as Jon Jones. People saying the record, like, you could still argue that Jon Jones has a stronger record than DJ. I'm not saying that, but Jon Jones' record isn't as blown up as people make it out to be.
I don't know that we're being, when they say that we're being fickle, I don't know that we're being fickle. I just think that the race is that tight that every fight matters.
It is, yeah, that's true.
Jones has only fought one time in 2014, 15, 16, and 17. And 17 may wind up not counting, depending on that appeal. But that appeal, you gotta feel, is like maybe a 5% chance that something goes in his favor. Otherwise, it's sticking. And since 2014, that fight with Glover Teixeira, that began his run of fighting one time per year. Since then, Mighty Mouse has fought 8 times. And they've all been title defenses, so there wasn't the, oh, well, OSP's filling in. I mean, I guess that was for an interim title or whatever. They've all been, title defenses where every single guy is gunning for DJ. And around that time, DJ's become more of a finisher, not a decision guy. 6 of them were finishes, 5 of them were finishes, 3 of them were decisions. But out of his last 4, 3 have been submissions, 1 has been a decision. Did Elliott deserve it? No, he went through a tournament. Did Hayes deserve it? No, but that's because he's also been wiping out the rest of the division. So you have to kind of keep things in perspective. The same thing, the same way you're saying, Jones fought a lot of former champions. Well, that's because that division had turnover. This one hasn't. That's why Demetrius can't boast about fighting a former champion unless we bring up Miguel Torres. Oh, by the way, that was at 135 pounds. Look, all Jones has to do is exonerate his name and win his next fight. Jones is probably the great one, or the greatest. If GSP were to do something special in New York, it could be him. We're going to argue back and forth for a while. All I say is keep an open mind. Know that there's great arguments to be made about all of them. Maybe later in the week we can maybe expand on a little bit more as far as, like, forget about GOAT, forget about pound for pound. Who's just had the more impressive run? All right, folks, let's wrap it up for today. Big thank you to Lyoto Machida, Johny Hendricks, and Michael Johnson. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Evan Dunham in studio. We'll definitely work on grabbing a few more names so that we can play a little bit of catch-up, because last week we obviously missed a couple of days and then had some in-studio guests, so we definitely want to deliver and catch up with some of these great fighters that have fights coming up or they're just somehow in the news. So, for Dan, Tom, and Goes at the Mandalay Bay, Danny back east, I am Gorgeous George. I hope you had a great time with us. And we'll be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, with another edition of MMA Junkie Radio. Until then, be champions.
Be a good boy, don't ever